Hey, it's Liz DiAlto, and this is the Untame the Wild Soul Woman podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untame the Wild Soul Woman is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. Hello, sweet treats, wild friends, and lovers of all things untamed. Real quick before we dive into today's show, I just wanted to make sure you know where to go for all of the other extra resources that I create, not just here related to the podcast, but in general. So everything related to the Untame Yourself world exists over at untameyourself.com. You can head over there and enter your name and email anywhere on that homepage, and you will get email notifications every week when we write blog posts, which often are just deeper dives into the topics that we talk about here on the podcast. We do free video training series, online workshops. Sometimes we're collaborating on a deeper level with some of the women that we have here on the show. So if you don't want to miss out on any of those resources or any of the things coming up in the next few months that I have in the pipeline for you, one of which is going to be a free training on transparent communication, how to have a courageous conversation, and how to apply that to any kind of relationship in your life, which will be coming up in March or April. Haven't decided yet. Definitely enter your name and email at untameyourself.com so you don't miss out on any of those things. Also over there, for those of you who really love the show, who really love the conversations with women and really crave to connect with women like you who are on a similar path to you, but in a real life setting, like to get out of your town and to connect in person and circle up with women who you really can connect with, women who get you and will support you. I have a couple Untame Yourself weekend retreats going on in 2016, the next of which is April 29th through May 1st here in San Diego. So if that's something you're interested in, just to quickly let you know, what we really hone in on in those weekend retreats are the four main areas in life: health, wealth, relationships, and spirituality. So if you have anything that you'd like to work on, expand into, become more available and receptive for in any of those categories, check out a retreat. You can apply at untameyourself.com/weekend-retreat. And when you apply, I see all the applications. They come straight to me. If it's a good fit, I'll be in touch to schedule an interview and we'll go from there. So that was it. Just what I wanted to share with you before we get rolling today. Now for today's show. Elizabeth DiAlto here, your host for the Untame the Wild Soul podcast. And for today's Ask Elizabeth episode, I want to take a deeper dive into something that I cover in my book, Untame Yourself. Reconnect to the lost art, power, and freedom of being a woman. Now, whether you're a man or a woman listening to this or watching this, this is universal. You do not have to be a woman to apply what I'm talking about here. Now, I did this a couple months back with another chapter of the book on transparent communication. So if you haven't listened to that episode, definitely listen to that one. Maybe even go back and listen to that one first and then this, or listen to it right after you listen to this one, because they really go hand in hand. Like these two episodes, just like these two chapters in the book, are absolute best friends. And sometimes it takes having a better understanding of the value of transparent communication in order to actually work up the courage you need to have for a courageous conversation. So what I did in that episode, which was an experiment, was I actually read straight from that chapter of the book, stopping along the way to elaborate a little bit. And I got some great feedback on that. So not something I'll do every week, but definitely once in a while, since you all seemed to like it so much the last time. So here we go. This is actually chapter 11 of the book, The Courageous Conversation. And along with this chapter is a whole framework that I developed. So if there are people in your life who you have courageous conversations that you want to be having, definitely do this. Definitely take the time to fill out a worksheet first. You can get that worksheet by going to untameyourself.com/companion. You'll actually get the entire book companion in there, and the Courageous Conversation worksheet is a part of it. And so just to encourage you, before we dive in here, I want to read you a note that I got from a friend and former client of mine, Ashita Gupta, shortly after my book came out. She had sent me this voice memo, and I typed it out. She said, you know how we read and reread books like Women Who Run with the Wolves and our Brene Brown books? I've been reading Untame Yourself again and again and keep coming back to parts that really help me. I want to tell you how much it's helped and how much I appreciate you writing it. I'm having lots of hard, very hard conversations lately and have used the framework. I was literally searching for a framework like it to structure my conversations. I was reading a book called Fierce Conversations, which helped, but yours helped more. I used your structure, and it was exactly what I was looking for. I'm so impressed by your strength and that you shared your story. I love that I have a woman who's trailblazing an aspect of myself that I'm looking to develop and that I've been struggling with. You're in part one of my guides. Thank you. So here we go. The courageous conversation. If anyone were to ask me, hey, Elizabeth, what's the most life-changing chapter of your book, I'd probably say this one. Before we get into the instruction, I'll tell you about two of the courageous conversations I was most afraid to have in the last 3 years. The first was with my partner, Michael, in the spring of 2015. We'd been living together for about 7 months, and I was still having a hard time adjusting to living with a partner. It was my first time. It finally dawned on me that one of the biggest reasons I struggled is because for over a decade, wherever I'd lived, even with roommates, I'd had my own space, at least my own room. When we moved in together, even though we have a spare room, we, like most couples, decided to share the master bedroom and left the other room open for guests. And also, in our case, for movement and meditation. That's what happy couples are supposed to do, right? Sleep in the same bed? According to the models I grew up with, yes. But what if you really love your partner, yet need more personal space? That was the situation in which I found myself. I had what felt like a crazy idea to move into the guest room. The reason I was scared to bring it up with Michael is that in my experience, any couple I'd ever known who didn't share a bedroom either had problems or were kind of just mailing it in. When I brought it up with him, I opened the conversation by saying, hey, can I share something with you that I'm really afraid to share but feels super important? Of course, he said yes. Then I presented my idea to move into the guest room. At first, he questioned whether it was a good or bad thing that I felt that way. Were we breaking up? What would people think? Then he felt into the idea of sleeping on his own most nights with the option to have sleepovers whenever we want. Within a few minutes, he was just as sold on the idea as I was. Within hours, I had my clothes in the guest room closet, the air mattress set up in there. I ordered a luxury foam bed topper to make it more comfy until I set up a real bed. As for our relationship, within weeks, our connection not only deepened because of the change, we started raving to all of our friends about the relationship hack we'd discovered. So much of the desire between us that had been dulled because we live and work at home and spend so much time together as a result was allowed to return. In our case, not sleeping together every night created some space, mystery, and longing. Michael described it to someone like this. I wake up in the morning now and I miss her instead of looking over and thinking, you again. Had I not spoken up, who knows what my overwhelmed feelings and need for space could have snowballed into? Resentment, anger, or at least tension that could have interfered with our connection. So that's the basis for courageous conversations. Having these open conversations with the people closest to you will create opportunities for you to practice a lot of what we've discussed throughout the rest of the book. Practices around choice, allowing other people to have their own experiences, not being offended, and more. So here's how you get started. When I started consciously and intentionally having these kinds of conversations a few years ago, I dove right in with one of the most challenging people in my life, who at the time was my mom. I say it was challenging because our beliefs at the time were so different and because there was a lot that had gone unsaid between us for many years. I can't speak for her, but what I was reluctant to be open was because I was scared to upset her, add more stress to her life, or disappoint her. And I'm going to pause here to interject. For those of you listening or watching, I bet a lot of you can probably relate to that. There are probably things that you're holding back on or holding in because you don't want to bother someone or because you feel like it's a burden. And so in a sense, you're taking on the burden, you're shouldering the extra stress or the extra pain, and that stress and that pain has to go somewhere. And more than likely, it's going somewhere in your body and manifesting in the form of an illness, maybe just physical discomfort or pain. Maybe it's something like adrenal fatigue, or maybe it's just straight up resentment that you're carrying around, and that just gets heavy over time, whether it's physically heavy or emotionally heavy. So this is one of the reasons why having these conversations to get it out and to clear the air is so valuable and useful. So I also felt indebted to my mom for all the support she'd given me my whole life, and almost like I thought I owed it to her to honor her opinions and feelings over my own. And that wasn't serving either one of us. So I remember so many vivid moments of our first courageous conversation. I was living in Laguna Beach at the time, and I decided to go for a walk while I called her. Walking and talking is something that really soothes me. It's almost like movement coaxes the words, thoughts, and true feelings out of me more naturally and easily than if I were just sitting. I take client calls like this all the time for the same reason, and the movement also serves to keep me out of my head and present in my body to my sensations and my felt experience. So it was kind of overcast outside as I walked down the beach that day, letting the power and the energy of the ocean fuel my courage, keep my heart open, and enable me to not shut down my feelings. I was pretty nervous and even had a bit of a stomachache at first. I covered almost 3 miles walking during our conversation to give you an idea of how long it took. At the end, I knew everything was okay, as my mom said, even though a lot of what you just said was hard to hear, I can feel your love and I appreciate it. And I'll tell you, at that time, I didn't have a framework for this. I was basically going on some inspiration from reading Brene Brown's Daring Greatly and wanting to be vulnerable and show my heart to someone who I knew I could trust and who I knew it would benefit the connection and benefit the relationship. So with that, we began a healing journey that we've been on together ever since. I'm never afraid to say anything to my mom anymore, and I'm constantly and pleasantly surprised with how open she is and by her wisdom and receptivity. And I'm pretty sure she was always like that. I had just never given her the chance to be that way with me before, or taken the time to allow myself to see her that way. So it's just one benefit of having these conversations. People can and will surprise you all the time. So much of what you fear is 100% made up in your very own mind. The only way out of that is through questioning and experimenting. Courageous conversations give people the opportunity to show you who they really are. Then, based in reality and what's actually been said, what's actually happened, you get to decide how to move forward. No more decisions or hurt feelings that are based on made-up thoughts, theories, or judgments, or expectations. This is heaven on earth. So here is how the framework works. And again, I want to remind you, there's a worksheet for this, and this is all written and laid out in the book. So if you're someone who's visual and you actually need to see this, definitely check out the book. You can get it at untameyourself.com/Amazon. It's only on Kindle for now, but come May, it will be out in a print version, which I'm super excited for. Or just download that book companion so you can get the PDF. All right. So the general path a courageous conversation will take includes the following elements, and this is a rough order. I recommend pre-conversation journaling, taking the time to set up and schedule the conversation. Don't just bombard someone and drop it on them. Intro the actual conversation. Share with the person what you don't want and you're actually what you're afraid might happen. Then share what you do want and what is your desired outcome. Describe your experience, and we'll dive into why that's really important. Ask if they have anything to share, and then you make your ask or you present your solution. And then at the end, you can establish expectations and agreements, boundaries, or however you both want to do things differently moving forward. Because these conversations are very solution and very outcome oriented. This isn't a conversation that you're just having to emotionally process things. You're having it to resolve something or to get to the other side of something. And so you might, depending on what the issue or what's going on with this person, there might be a series of these conversations, but there's always that first one, which is the scariest, which is why I give you a framework. And the reason why this particular week I'm sharing this is because in the free Facebook group for Untame Yourself, which you can join if you're not already a member at untameyourself.com/Facebook, I just noticed how often women are saying, oh my God, I have to have this conversation, or I have to do this thing, or I don't know how to say no to this person, or I'm really scared to talk to so-and-so about this thing. And so I just want to give you another resource to remember. You can always come back to this whenever you need to have one of these conversations. Because the thing is this, it gets easier every time. It's still scary, it's still nerve-wracking, but gradually you become more comfortable and you become more confident, especially when you have a framework to follow. And once you get good at it and confident, you don't need the framework anymore. You can freestyle because it'll become part of who you are and how you do things. But for now, it's great to have the support. So here you go. Pre-conversation, step 1. Get clear with yourself first and answer these questions. You can either do it in the worksheet or you could just do it in your journal. So what's going on with this person that isn't okay with me right now? What are the things I'm feeling that I don't want to feel? How do I want to feel in relationship with this person? the thing I'm most afraid to say to this person, what I don't want to happen, what I'm afraid of, what I do want to happen, or what my desired outcome is. Some other follow-up questions to consider would be, what support do I need, and what change am I trying to create? So I think you can see why it's so valuable to get very clear on these things yourself before having one of these conversations, so that when you go into it, you could be super, super clear. And sometimes, because here's what happens. When we're nervous, sometimes we have a tendency to just keep talking. And sometimes if we're just keeping talking, we end up saying things we don't actually mean. And that just makes it messier. So to get clear beforehand helps it be less messy in the process. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, loaded with fresh emotion, we say things we don't mean. Taking the time to get clear and honest with yourself ensures you only say things you truly mean from a place of considered feelings, clarity, and calm. And that's the other thing. Sometimes the process of pre-journaling out what you want to say helps you remove some of the charge from the emotions you might be feeling, which lets you have a more connected and a more productive conversation because it's not so heated. Answering these questions will give you the language to use in your conversation. And don't worry, you don't have to say anything exactly the way I do. And you may not choose to share all of your thoughts or exact words. You may even write it alone in your journal with no one reading it over your shoulder. And just that might be enough. You might decide, hey, I went through the process. I don't even need to have the conversation because I feel better. By starting with the full set of questions, you get the full truth from yourself in order to begin, which means no hiding. So here's how you set up the conversation. Depending on who this conversation is with and your relationship with him or her, you may want to set it up ahead of time. You might be able to just bring it up while you're together sometime soon. It's your call. This section assumes you're scheduling it in advance. So in one of his bits, my favorite comedian, Dave Chappelle, describes how every man feels when his wife or girlfriend says, "We need to talk." He only uses one word: fuck. And this doesn't just apply to men though. Like, we've all had these experiences, right? When someone's like, "Can we talk?" And immediately your mind goes to, "Oh my God, what did I do? I'm going to get in trouble. Something's wrong." We have that tendency to panic. And this doesn't just apply to men. A lot of us are wired to immediately assume something is wrong when someone asks that question. So because you want to be received fully and have the person you want to talk to show up to the conversation without feeling dread, worry, or assuming the worst, be sure to have the conversation in a place where you could both feel safe as well. A crowded Starbucks or another public place might not be the best choice. Make sure you have privacy and give yourself and the other person dignity. So in the book and in the companion, I give you a script, okay? So I'm going to read you through this. Let's give you an example. The script for actually setting it up. And you can do this via text message or email if you want. But when it comes to the actual conversation part, you must do that over the phone or in person. You cannot do this through emails or text messages. Okay. Hey, Name, I've been working on some personal stuff lately, and there were a few things I'd love to share with you. Would you be up for a chat? Nothing's wrong. I'm just noticing some areas where I'd like to show up better, and respecting that, I'd really value your thoughts and feelings. This works well because you're taking ownership. You're making it about you and not them, and making sure they know nothing is wrong and expressing that you value their input. Now, back when I was pilot testing this chapter, when I had written the book back at the end of 2014, I had sent this out to a lot of people to try it out and give me some feedback. And some people's feedback at this section was they felt like it was being deceiving by saying nothing's wrong. And here's why it's not deceiving. Because the whole basis of this conversation is, again, to get to a point of resolution, is to have an outcome, to make some progress, to heal something with a person, right? And so a big core of the intention is to not make the other person wrong, but to own your side of things and your experience and come from that place. So that said, there might be things you want to resolve, but it's not wrong. It's just what is, whatever the situation currently is. So you're not approaching this as something's wrong or something needs to be fixed. There is a conflict and it might be uncomfortable, but it's actually right because you're coming to a place of being able to agree and being able to resolve and being able to openly connect and communicate. So that's not deceiving. We just want to make sure you're not making anything wrong with the other person. It's like, hey, I just want to have a conversation. I want to get your feedback. I want to get your reflections. And it's a different approach. as opposed to often when people go into conversations like, we need to talk because something's wrong. And again, that's what creates that dread. So we want to avoid that feeling. Okay, so the step-by-step conversation script. The reason I give you a script is to reduce your opportunities for overthinking this, especially at first while you're learning. You obviously don't have to follow this verbatim. In fact, I encourage you to make it your own. This just gives you the model so you can get to the conversations without worrying so much about what to say, because often, because you're so worried about what to say, you won't have the conversation. I'd rather you're clunky with what you say, but you have the conversation. So here's the opening. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. It means a lot. Like I mentioned, I've been working on some personal stuff lately, and there are a few things I'd love to share with you. Nothing's wrong. I'm just noticing some areas where I'd like to show up better and would really value your thoughts and feelings. So here's what's going on. That segues into sharing your fears, don't wants, do wants, and desired outcome, which you already did your pre-conversation journaling about. A way to segue into that is to say something like, I'm a bit nervous to share this with you because I don't want whatever it is that you wrote out to happen. What I do want is, and then you share that. And then you go on to describe your experience. And this part I can't fully script out for you because I don't know what your experience is. But this is when you'll describe what is going on with you, whatever is the issue or the experience. And here are some of the prompts and questions, right? What feels good about it and what doesn't? What's making you comfortable or uncomfortable? What do you want to be available for? What are you no longer available for? That's a popular one if you're needing to set boundaries with people. What hurts your feelings? How do you want to feel? What do you never want to feel again? And what have you been doing? This is a great place to bring up expectations or introduce the idea that you're trying to change some part of yourself. And you also can share what you want to do differently and be as specific as possible. So again, you want to make this all about you in this conversation. So start addressing behaviors or scenarios with the other person, but you're not attacking their character. So you want to use statements like, when this happens, I feel, or my feelings get hurt when, or when you say things like blank, I assume it means blank, or something like, I realized I've been having an expectation that. So as you're listening to this, I hope you're seeing all the ways in which I mean take ownership. So speaking from a place of I in this conversation rather than you is what's making the fertile ground for healing and for resolution, because we're not just pointing fingers, we're not just blaming, which really allows the other person to take it in and feel respected and feel consulted, like you're working with them, not just trying to blame them for things. And so what tends to happen at this part of the conversation is a lot of moments where the person will be like, oh my God, I had no idea, where someone will see the impact their words and actions have been having. And then when they respond, you'll often see how the way you felt about things was not a result of their intention at all. So this is where you get to reveal a lot of miscommunication or misunderstanding that's been happening. So you're opening so much space here for new intimacy, connection, compassion, and even understanding. And I can't emphasize enough how often you might say to someone, especially things between like women and men, men are very single focused. So, you might feel ignored if you're constantly trying to like interrupt someone, and then they're not responding to you, or you text them and they don't answer you for hours. It doesn't necessarily mean they're ignoring you. We as women often decide that means that they don't love, care, or respect us, but really it's sometimes they're just like in the middle of something. And so, even if, say, for example, you said, when I text you and it takes you hours to get back to me, I just feel like you don't care. And they might be like, oh my God, I was in the middle of doing something. I totally forgot about that. And you get to see these human moments of how we make assumptions or we blame or we take things personally, and it's totally not meant that way. So you just get to see all that stuff melt and dissolve right in front of you. Then you want to thank them for listening and ask if they have anything to share. You might say something like, how is all of that landing for you? Or what's present for you after hearing all of that? And as they answer you, listen, like really listen. Hear what they're saying, keep your heart open, breathe, and remember to do your very, very best not to take anything personally. The next step is to make your ask or present your solution. You say something like, I'd love to share what I'd like to experience instead now. Hear what you'd like to experience instead and come to an agreement that feels good to both of us. And then you go from there, and then you get to come to these agreements where you go, okay, so from now on, when this happens, I'll know it means this. And you kind of get to decode each other's behaviors and language and then have these agreements. And I actually recommend writing the agreements down, especially if this is in the context of a partnership or, a really close friend or family member, someone who you interact with often. At the end of this chapter, I also talked about how to say no with grace. Just today, as I'm posting this, someone in our Facebook group had a job offer that she didn't want. And she was like, how do I say no to this without burning bridges? And so this is a framework of its own, and it's much simpler than the entire courageous conversation. The reason it's simpler is because you're no longer going to explain yourself to people when you say no. That's the thing we do, right? We want to explain, and we think we need to give people all these details, when often what that actually does is make people feel like we're bullshitting them or giving them an excuse. So just an efficient no, kind of like in the movie Billy Madison, if any of you've ever seen that. It's one of my favorite movies from when I was a kid. And this guy goes through this whole long drawn-out explanation, and Billy Madison goes, a simple no would have been just fine. That's really how people feel. Anne Lamott says, there's something you can repeat for yourself when you're having trouble with this. No is a complete sentence. So I'll admit, I giggle sometimes as I fantasize about responding to some of the emails I receive with one word, just writing back no. That doesn't always feel really nice. We want people to feel just as good receiving our no as they would receiving our yes. So we wrap it in love and approval. So the reason it's not necessary to explain yourself is, again, it just wastes energy and could even create more conflict. So here's the formula. So simple. Gratitude. So say something like, oh, thank you so much for thinking of me. No. And then make a loving sentiment. And that's how you make a graceful decline. So here's an example. If someone invites you to an event you can't attend, I appreciate this information so much, I have to decline. Have so much fun. Or in the case of that job offer, something like, oh, thank you so much for this offer. I really appreciate it. I'm a no at this time. Best of luck, or, good luck with the company, or something like that. If a coworker wants you to help out with something you don't have space for, thank you for thinking of me. I don't have space for this right now. Good luck. Saying things like, I don't have space for this, or I'm not available for that, simple, 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 easy. And here's also a framework for an email we send people when they reach out to invite me to collaborate, interview me, or do something else work-related that I'm not available for. You probably have your own context in your life where you get requests that this might be helpful for. Hey, so-and-so, thank you so much for thinking of me, and congratulations. I know a lot of work goes into that. I'm a no for this. I'm sending you a lot of love and good juju for the project. So again, I highly encourage you to use your own words. Use words that feel genuine and true for yourself. And again, you can get the worksheet if you want to see this and go through and have the journaling questions at untameyourself.com/companion. So if you want to continue this conversation, or if you want to clarify anything that I covered, if you're confused about anything, or you have something specific that you want to talk to someone about and you're feeling nervous, come on over to untameyourself.com/Facebook. That's a great place to ask those questions. So thank you so, so much. That concludes our episode, and I will talk to you soon.
And what I've discovered so far is when the masculine and the feminine are in balance in the way you're doing, and again, like you said, apply this to other areas of your life if it's not business for you.
Yeah.
But in the context of business, I ensure that I create spaciousness every single day so that I can hear what my next step is. And once I've received that, which is the feminine or the soul in the lead, then I know what to do and I engage my masculine to get it done.
Yes.
There's effort to get it done. There's effort, but there's not struggle. There's not exhaustion. There's not overexertion. There's not control and trying and all those other words that are born out of this sense that I've got to get it done and putting the masculine first.